This is a Rogue Media Network podcast.
Bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about bros and heroes. Gonna tell you about
comic books, costumes, facts,
Boots!
and other stuff.
In this week's issue, Alan Moore's Superman.
Welcome into Bros, Foes, and Heroes. I'm Zach, joined as always by the man of tomorrow himself, Mr. Mike.
Man, your tomorrow is bleak.
Well, okay. Well, I was just saying.
Saying.
I'm just saying if today is like a Tuesday
Yeah.
and tomorrow's a Wednesday, you're definitely a Wednesday man.
Am I?
So you're the man of
So you're
tomorrow.
telling me that I'll be around tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
No, I'm using it because it's
I'll go
one
ahead
of
and make some plans.
yeah, it's a nickname though. At least at one point in time for a certain superhero, the
Yeah.
man of tomorrow was
Yeah.
Superman.
Batman, right? Oh, Superman.
Yeah, close though. I mean, it had man in the
I was
title,
just-
so you were like half there.
I was just messing with you.
Were
Yeah.
you?
No, I wasn't.
No, we kind of started it last week. We ran a rerun or a reprint, as I like to call them, since we do
That was my
comics.
fault.
Oh, it's totally fine. But we got to focus on. I started a new series of what we're doing of Superman stories that don't suck, is what I like to call it.
Very nice.
It's just some really good Superman stories because I feel a lot of times when it comes to people and they think of the character of Superman, they just kind of think of this kind of godly like creature who's just figure that's overpowered and always does good, and he's just always like, I think that sometimes they miss or at least for me, and it's my opinion, miss what the character can be. And I
Sure.
think that there's stories where he's used that it shows just how good of a character and how I think that he has a place, deservedly so, where he belongs in the kind of landscape that is comics because of this. So I'm focusing on a couple different stories that kind of span different decades. And I know we've talked a little bit before about Alan Moore. I'm a fan of Alan Moore.
Yeah.
Alan Moore is known for a lot of great things. Watchmen, him and Dave Gibbons, which, funny enough, we will see the two of them collaborate on a story we're about to get into before they did Watchmen together. But that was the big thing for them. Also, V for Vendetta. He kind of brought back Miracle Man. He ushered, The Killing Joke. Like, he ushered in
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
this kind of seriousness in comics that wasn't. There's a difference, but for me personally, between the Alan Moore kind of dark seriousness and then the stuff of like the late 80s and 90s where it just became so just grand and over the top in scale, kind of. But he wanted to tell a lot of just interesting stories, and I think that he told a total of, while he worked at DC, he got to work on, it's technically 4, but 3 stories involving Superman. And we're going to cover 3 of those. One he got to do, I think, was for an annual. He did a Swamp Thing Superman story because he kind of turned Swamp Thing into the character it was, and that's what brought him a lot of fame there to begin with, is just his run on Swamp Thing and how good he made that title. But while he's working on that, he also got to work on a couple different Superman annuals, and then also essentially he got to tell the ending of the Silver Age Superman. He got to tell the final Silver Age Superman story, and those are stories that we're going to get into today, of just what it looks like when Alan Moore writes Superman, because I think that he wrote the character really well in the 2 stories we're going to cover.
So whenever I think of Superman, I always think of a big dork. Like, and I don't think enough writers or movie makers or whatever lean into that. Like the 70s, what is it, 79 or something?
Yeah.
The Christopher Reeve one.
Yeah.
That one leaned heavily into him just being a big dork. You know, he's an alien, number one, and should be approached as such. And then as Clark Kent, he should just be a big giant dork.
Yeah.
You know? And we haven't seen that a lot since those movies.
No, you haven't. And it's funny that you kind of bring that up a bit. I fell down a rabbit hole the other night
Yeah.
of kind of doing research for this and stuff, and it
Rabbits?
was about rabbits. Henry Cavill, who was
I have my
Superman.
feelings.
Yeah, who was Superman. He was on the Graham Norton show, and they were talking about, I guess, like, him just putting, like, Clark Kent just putting on glasses, like,
Yeah.
would that really
Yeah.
work? It's funny, like, I think there's videos on YouTube that show, like, observer bias of how things like that could work. But he tells the story of, I think, like, he kind of went out there and to Times Square while they had, like, the wraparound banners for Batman vs. Superman
Oh, yeah.
of him on there wearing a Superman T-shirt.
Huh.
And he was only stopped twice.
Yeah.
And it was once to be asked for directions of somebody getting off the subway, and the second one was somebody in a coffee shop who asked him to stop taking so many pictures.
Oh,
Nobody
wow.
was able to put two and two together. So, like, I think the fact, like, you add that in there, like,
Yeah.
you add on the point
Yeah.
that he's just kind of acting, because as Clark Kent, as a newspaper reporter, like, we'll get into it a little bit. During the 80s,
Clark
they
Kent's
thought they
supposed
wuld
to-
going to spruce it up and make him a TV reporter.
No, he's supposed
But-
to stumble over things and be bad with women and all the things, He's supposed to be just a big dork.
Yeah,
You
but
know?
the thing
he
is,
is a dork.
the thing is, though, like, for him to have the Superman physique, like,
Yeah.
he's not going to be built like a dork.
No.
So that's like kind of like, or at least the mental, like when you think of the generic kind of.
I think that's why I like the Christopher Reeve stuff, because he was not jacked.
No, he wasn't.
But he made a
Well-
very good Superman.
And that's what I'll say that I do kind of like about the art. Let me
You
see
know-
if I can find just a picture of, is it Gibbons or is it Kurt Swan? So Kurt Swan did, Gibbons is a little muscly. Kurt Swan did Superman for years.
Yeah.
We've talked about him before, how it kind of, it's not Kurt Swan's fault, how when Jack Kirby would draw Superman,
Yeah.
they would erase over the face and have Kurt
Yeah,
go back and
yeah.
draw over it. But he's just kind of gave that signature
Yeah,
kind of look
yeah.
to him. And just Superman in that form just looks very, like, it's hard to pull that off.
This is one of the reasons that comic book movies are so terrible, right? Because the people don't understand it the way that the writers of these stories do. They go at it from a movie or studio perspective rather than from a comic perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why James Gunn's Marvel movies were so good, because he seems to approach it from more of a comic book perspective.
He does, and I'll, at least from what I've seen so far with the Marvel stuff, like, it's worked. Like, whatever he does, it does. But you see that a lot of times it's, I watch something, again, I like to prepare a lot for these
Yeah,
things. I always
sure.
love to dive into.
Sure.
I kind of got the full backstory. I knew some of, but I know a little more about, like, why Alan Moore absolutely hates DC. And it was all kind of spans off of the Watchmen.
Yeah.
But
I forget that he did that.
we'll see, like, the story, and we can cover it later, but it's
Yeah, you're
super
fine.
interesting
Sure.
of just how, like, he was under the assumption that he and Dave Gibbons were going to get the rights to the Watchmen after it was out of print.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And since they wrote it as just 12 issue, like a 12 series issue,
Right.
those single issues aren't in print that long.
Yeah,
So
sure,
they thought after a year, they're done printing, all the rights go to him and Gibbons.
Uh-huh.
Well, it got really big
Mm-hmm.
and it got super popular. So DC then started releasing them as collected editions, and those things never go out of print.
Right. Sure.
So then it was like,
So it just
I'm
kept going on
never
and on
getting
and
my
on.
rights
Yeah,
to
yeah,
this kind of thing.
yeah.
Like, essentially in like, in just a TLDR kind of version of it without going into everything. Like, there's a lot of different things. Like, even before, like, it got like that, one of the rules, like, DC told him was like, hey, we want to do this. I don't want any, like, promotional material. Like, this is just a comic. I don't want you to kind of, like, sell merchandise off of that. Oh, yeah, no, we won't.
Oh,
DC
please.
sold buttons for it. He
Oh.
found out about it. They're like, no,
come
no. Those are promotional items to promote it. Like, he, like, skirted around it, and he was like, okay, fine, I'll give you this one. Then, unbeknownst to him, they work with a company, a role-playing game company, to make a game based off of it, which he finds out about, and he goes back to him, and he's like, well, what's this? Oh, no, this is like, and they try to skirt it again until eventually where he's like, no. Like,
Off the Watchmen?
yeah.
So they sold the happy face buttons.
I mean, I don't know if it was
I'm
exactly
sure
that.
it's
I'm
that
sure.
happy face with the bullet hole in its
Well,
head or
the
whatever.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, and then what'd you say? A
They
game?
made like a role-playing game,
Oh,
Watchmen game in
that's
the 80s.
Really dumb.
I kind of want to find it and play it
Yeah.
now that
no,
I know
I mean it would be
exists.
cool to play it. I'm just saying it's not a.
But they can.
That's not a series. I would think you could make a role playing game out of the boys
but
much
it's-
easier
well,
than
here-
you could.
Well,
the
you have to
Watchmen.
understand this is the 80s.
Yeah,
Like this
I
is
know,
going
I
on
know.
while it's at its peak.
Yeah, I get
And
it.
at the time, I don't think people well, I mean, obviously it's an older culture now, and comic books isn't where it is.
Right.
But like Watchmen changed a lot about comics. Like a lot of the reasons comics are the way they are in some instances when it comes to like the way stories are told, the grittiness, it's all off Watchmen. Like there's a lot of that. Not saying that it's you can just find roots in a
Right,
lot of things
right,
from there,
right.
and a lot of things that kind of just Alan Moore did, along with other kind of seminal works there of the '80s. Frank Miller, for as much of a crazy person kind of as his work turned into, like Dark Knight Returns and his run on Daredevil, like there's some really good stuff in there.
Yeah.
But I digress. We'll have to
So-
talk. I'll get more into Alan Moore once we do our Watchmen.
So Watchmen came out in 2009, but it's
The
but
movie?
but it's based in 1985.
85 is when,
Yeah. Okay.
So
Is that when Watchmen actually came out? Okay.
85 is when the series, like the 12, it started releasing.
Well, they did that correctly, apparently. Zack Snyder did direct it, though.
So he doesn't. I also found out that apparently I don't know if this is directly from. Alan Moore does not like Hollywood adaptations of
No kidding.
anything he's done.
Yeah.
The only one that he's ever on that I found out that, or at least that I could find, the only thing that he's ever approved of, funny enough, is a animated episode of the Justice League where they adapted this Superman story we're about to tell, to which they gave him and Dave Gibbons credit, and they kept it pretty close to the source material, like for the most part. He was like, "Yep, saw it. That's really good." That's
Well-
the only thing I've ever seen him kind of give.
Think about the people that have to be involved in making an animated movie versus the people involved having to make a live action.
Yeah.
I mean, you you get a lot more leeway in that animated.
Oh, for sure,
universe.
for sure. And they had like somebody in the industry, right? But they tell the story of how like a lot of fans, or at least people, feel like Snyder missed.
Well, the other thing, he
It's a
changed,
very-
changed the ending, but the other thing is like, in a comic book or in that area when you're making an animated movie at these studios, I'm sure you don't have to go through the same process of like dailies and all that kind of stuff where the jocks up top get to watch all your stuff and say, "Oh, I don't like that."
Oh, yeah, no, for
make it a
sure.
monkey or
For
what,
sure.
that kind of thing. So I'm sure that played a part in it. But I can certainly see his disdain for the industry
Oh,
because it's not an industry that treats their people well.
well,
And then you go into movies and it's even worse.
that's the thing. Is like he kind of has. It's nice to read these Superman stories and appreciate them for what they are
Yeah.
at the time, because I don't think that he has much. And I've seen a lot of interviews. He has no interest whatsoever at all kind of in that superhero genre. And I get
Sure.
it. Like he went in with one thing, and just the disillusionment and seeing how the industry treated its actual heroes there in there. I get where he comes from, and just
Oh,
like
absolutely.
of how the comic industry treats its creators. So like I understand why he doesn't like it.
Well, the other issue is you've got some very creative people being put in a very small box.
Yes.
And so creatives that are actually productive do not want to get interrupted by the man or whatever, and so I get it. I mean, it was the same deal with Stan Lee. He was like 3/4 corporate, quarter creative. And so that's why they got along for a while. And then the corporate part took over and they were like, "Oh, fuck this guy." Yeah. That's the way it looks to me.
Yeah,
anyway.
no. I got it.
By the way, why does it say "Oh Superman" on the back?
I don't know. That's just what.
That's weird, right?
So-
you would think it'd be OH. It's just the letter O
I-
and then Superman.
Yeah, I don't know.
Huh, okay.
Here's what I do find funny that I don't know if they know. It does say praise for Alan Moore, and
Yeah.
there is praise, but there is a quote on here
The
from
Onion.
The Onion that I wonder. Like I feel like
Oh,
because
shit.
the sometimes
I'm not going to look in the book.
No, you're
I
fine.
want to see this quote.
Because occasionally The Onion does do like,
yeah.
and it seems like it could be kind of like a
This is-
joking.
This is probably AV Club or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah, yeah.
but still,
still
to
just
put
funny
the
to see the
onion
Onion.
on it
Yeah.
as a source is stupid.
But before we get into, so we're going to tell the story that he did from the annual that's called Gift for the Man Who Has Everything. And then we're going to look at the 2-part that we'll close it out with of Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, which is essentially the last story of Silver Age Superman. And I'll explain that before we get into that. One thing that I found really cool that as we talk about Superman stories that don't suck, is it's guys or people who kind of seem to understand Superman who are able to write him really well. And I found this quote that I wanted to just throw out here right now from Alan Moore from an interview that he did about his Image comic Supreme that he was doing in 1999.
The Superman myth is a story about greatness and wish fulfillment. All superhero legends are based on this concept. Superman is the sun that all others revolve around. The story is a representation of an alien being who comes to Earth and just so happens to blend in among humans, while using his unique abilities not to rise above us but to help us. He cannot be a god, because gods are dictators who set rules for others to follow. Superman sets rules for himself and uses those rules for our benefit. The myth was perfected from the 1950s through roughly the 1970s, under the pencil of a severe talent, Kurt Swan. If America has a legend comparable to the ageless myths of antiquity, theirs is Superman.
So I feel like we have a guy there who kind of understands at least what Superman means. I love
Yeah.
the line of how that Superman can't be a god because gods are dictators and Superman has his own set of rules that he kind of like uses for himself. And we'll see that in these stories here, which is kind of why I wanted to use that there too.
Well, obviously he's not a god. He's an alien. Again,
that's
he's
true.
an alien.
Well,
hey, can I ask you one
yeah.
thing before we get started here? Super Dog or
Crypto.
whatever. Okay, whatever.
Crypto does
He's-
make an appearance in the story.
Okay. How do we
one of them.
explain the dog getting the powers?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's one of it's part of the like the silver. So
That's my
we've covered it some of just how zany it was kind of through the 50s and 70s, but it's stories like a lot of it. It's stories for children and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and they were fun.
the
but
only the
there's not a
only-
lot of logisticality.
No.
Or whatever. I don't know if that's a
logical,
word.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or
don't remember,
just
though.
logic. Yeah.
Go back and look it up
so
later.
well, and I have a disdain for Godzuki.
Okay.
Okay, you remember Godzuki?
Yeah,
The
from
little-
the animated Godzilla.
No,
Well, I remember
no,
it from.
this was live action.
Oh, see, I remember
Yeah.
from the animated Godzilla
Big ass
cartoon.
rubber suit. Okay.
Okay.
And so I don't like that.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you're pandering at that point because you can't come up with an original story. So let's throw a cute thing in here. Same deal with Scrappy Doo. Don't like that.
I do not like
because
Scrappy Doo.
he is a real ass.
Yeah.
And coincidentally enough, James Gunn said, yeah, he's an ass, and they throw him out of the freaking van. So when we get to like super pets and things like that,
Yeah.
I'm just like, yeah, it's a bridge too far for
I
me.
get that,
can't.
but I really do like the way that Crypto's used in this. You'll see.
yeah, but Supergirl wanted to make it with a horse too.
That
so-
is true, but only when he was in his human form.
yeah, well, that still counts.
That was really weird.
Yeah, it's super weird,
If you
dude.
haven't, we covered.
Yeah.
There was multiple times that Supergirl was in like a relationship with Super
Yeah.
Horse, like an
Yeah.
actual horse that would turn into a human.
Yeah,
They kissed at least.
yeah, no, it's weird.
They spent the night together. Maybe I don't
I
remember.
don't know,
I don't
dude.
want to go back and read it. It was strange.
I would think you'd bonk teeth with a horse.
Well, no, he
you
was in
know,
his human
when you go to.
form, though.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, let's get into some.
Horses have big teeth.
I get it. We have a Superman annual here. Again, the first of the Alan Moore stories we are going to cover. This one by Alan Moore and art by Dave Gibbons, and it is called "For the Man Who Has Everything."
$1.25. What does it say? 1982.
$1.25, 1985.
Okay.
I think I bought last comic I bought $4. If you want to know, so that's where we're at
Yeah.
price wise.
No, the comics have gone out of control.
Well, it's funny that they rose to meet new prices, but
Uh-huh.
video games have not. Yep.
Yeah. Video games are too expensive too.
They are, but I mean, they were
Yeah.
still 54
It's
and
about
$60 for your
$60
Super
something
Nintendo
now,
games
right?
that they are
Yeah,
now. Yeah,
yeah.
like prices stay the same. It's really
Yeah,
weird.
think about that. Buying a Super Nintendo game that costs you $60.
But it was the norm then.
That's a lot.
It is.
at that point,
It is. So what we have here.
especially if you buy something like Conker's Bad Fur Day. Or
Well, no, that was
whatever.
on Xbox.
You know what I mean.
I get it. So what we have here is a story. We get a prologue that we see.
Battletoads?
Battletoads was on Genesis, but it was also on
Well, that was just NES, wasn't it?
regular Nintendo
Wasn't it
too.
on regular
I had Battletoads and Double Dragon.
We talked about
on-
Battletoads here.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We did. We talked
On
about the origin
Nintendo
of
Power,
Battletoads.
yeah.
We're going to be rambling for days.
That's
Let's get
fine.
into
Don't
this.
worry about it. Let's go.
So we get a man coming home from work in our prologue
Yeah.
here, and he's been working out in the at the Institute of Geology. It's a space planet. You can kind of tell we're on a different planet.
Did you say he's been working out at the Institute of
Yeah, he's been
Rocks?
working at the Institute of
okay.
Geology
Okay.
since dawn, right? He cataloged 200 species from the Candor crater. Does that sound
Great.
familiar?
Oh, no, it doesn't.
All right. Well, I
Is that
can
where
tell
that big
you
space worm is that almost ate the Millennium Falcon?
Nah, maybe.
Oh.
He gets home and he's hoping that his 2 kids are up so they can watch Nightwing and Flamebird together on their
Flamebird.
on their Hollow Factor. You can tell that this is like a well, I'm just saying, like you can tell it's a different
Yeah,
planet.
yeah,
They're
yeah.
building
Well,
this
not
up.
only a different planet, but a different time. Like 1985,
Yeah.
holodeck.
Oh,
or
we'll
whatever,
kind of
right?
see that too,
Yeah,
because the other one
yeah.
has to deal with the future a
Sure.
bit. And he opens the door and he talks about, and after that, he and his wife Lila can have a nice quiet night together, just the 2 of them. And then they get a surprise. You didn't hear us, Father. Happy birthday, Cal.
Oh,
Right? And
it's
it's
Cal.
happy. And they hug the kids. Van tugs at his tunic, and Kara Zor-El gives him a new headband. On the Hollow Factor, Nightwing saves Flamebird from a rogue metal eater. His weariness lifts the man, his family about him. He is content, right?
Here's what I can say about
It's
that.
a birthday
Yeah.
for, if you don't know and get it now, Kal-El
He's
is
the guy
Superman.
that was in the Go to White Castle. Right?
Oh, Cal Penn?
Yeah, isn't that who it is?
Different Cal.
Oh, okay.
That's a very prolific Cal Penn because he also was a speechwriter for the Obama
Cal Penn
administration.
was?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, great. Yeah.
Sponsored by White Castle.
I don't know about that. But we see a very
He
content.
was just on New Girl. when I
Oh,
was
the
watching
episode
it
you
the other
watched?
day, yeah. Well, he's been on a couple, but yeah, he's Allie's boyfriend, who's a pet agent. Like he represents dogs and cats and otters and stuff that go into movies.
Okay.
Yeah, he's
I'll
a
have to go
jerk
back and
in
watch
this.
that. I
Yeah,
forgot
he's a
about
real
that.
jerk in it. Yeah.
So what we get is it's kind of looks like it's a different type kind of
Yeah.
story of where it's
Yeah,
Superman is still on Krypton.
right.
He's married to a woman named Lila.
He wears these kick-ass
He
glasses.
has 2 kids. It's very futuristic. His cousin Kara's there. But Krypton
Yeah.
exploded.
How did this
That's
happen?
exactly.
Sure.
So then we jump to the Arctic Circle, February 29th, because at one point in time, February 29th was Superman's birthday because
Oh,
it was
yeah.
leap day.
Yeah, that's right.
So Superwoman gets
We
there.
just had one of those, and I remember you talking about that.
Yeah. So Superwoman. So Wonder Woman gets there and she just yells, "Beat you" to Batman and a very new Robin, Jason Todd.
Oh.
This is the first, we have just got a new Robin. His name's Jason Todd. And he's kind of, you might know him a little bit.
She's running around with a big beach ball.
Well, it's a present.
Oh, okay.
Like it's a present because they're there they flown to the
they've
Fortress of
flown to the
Solitude
thing. Got it.
for his birthday.
I see.
Do you get now for the man who has
now
everything?
I got it. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I just
Slowing
love
the
this
uptake
part
here.
where like Batman introduces Jason Todd to Wonder Woman, and she's like, "Oh, of course, the new Robin. I've seen you. Sorry, is it Jason? You look so much like Dick. I'm sorry, I just didn't even think to introduce myself." And she's like, "Nice to meet you. Interesting choice of career." And she goes, "Anyway, let's go ahead and head towards the door. Don't want anybody freezing." And Jason goes, "Before the 2 of us," like she goes, "You
Yeah.
2 freezing." He goes, "Before the 2 of us freezing." When she's dressed like that. And Batman, I just love this. Batman turns and goes, think clean thoughts, chum. And then he just kind of turns back to walk. And like Jason Todd's just like, oh man, I
Oh,
guess I
wow.
was kind of a Batman smirks
Yeah.
at it.
So, on
Oh,
any
man.
other planet, any other time, if you told somebody you look so much like Dick, that would be
Yeah.
an insult. I
And
would
but
think.
she's
Yeah.
talking about
I get
Nightwing,
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dick Grayson, or Richard. But they get into
Sorry, I just showed him a text message we just got from a friend of ours.
right in the middle of recording. That
He
was-
said,
I don't-
he said, yes, I will need a bathroom. Okay, great.
That's
All right. Yeah, sorry.
understandable. Oh man,
Yeah, I
that's gonna
couldn't
make
wait on
sense to
that. That's
nobody.
funny.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We got to chuckle out
That's
of it.
okay.
But so they go into the Fortress of Solitude and they're talking about.
What is his deal?
Well, that's so.
Okay, you're
And
gonna
they're
tell me.
talking about, hey, why did you get him? And Batman asks, and Wonder Woman's like, and tell you, like he can hear from here. I'm not gonna ruin the surprise. And Batman's like, yeah, well, I got this, like, this fancy, this horticulturist to breed a new strand of rose that I've called the Krypton. Like he had, like they've gone out of their way for like these cool birthday presents for suits.
Yeah.
And Robin's like, well, hey, where is? Oh, and they notice him. And he's got this like flower strapped to his chest. and he's just standing there kind of motionless.
Yeah, it looks weird. Like he's got it. It's almost like it's growing out of his chest.
And so Wonder Woman and Robin and Batman rush over to him, and they're trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? Is he alive? Is everything okay? Yeah, no, like his eyes, they look a little dilated. He's breathing. It's shallow, but he's alive. He's just in some other place, is what they say. And we get a flashback then to Kal-El, because he's back. He's not Superman. He's just regular old Kal-El back on Krypton.
Right.
No powers, just a normal dude. And he's just sitting there just kind of like staring out the window, and his wife's like, hey, is everything okay? And he's like, yeah, it just feels weird. I don't know. She's like, I invited your dad, but, you know, he didn't want to come here since your aunt and them were here. And he's like, yeah, politics and family, it's just weird, man. You don't want it to mix. It's And she's like, hey, it's your first day. Not his birthday, his first day. It's your first day. Let's not worry about that. Let's go up and watch
It's
something.
your first
and-
birthday, Superman.
So the next day, Cal goes and visits his dad, Jor, because it's Kal-El and Jor-El. I realize that these Superman names are a little ridiculous, but we're going to go by that. So Cal goes and visits his dad, Jor, and sees that his dad is kind of meeting with these religious extremists.
Never been a big fan of the headbands either.
Yeah, these religious extremists.
Yeah.
Because his dad feels like...
His dad does what?
So his
He's
dad,
like a politician,
His
right?
dad was like on the
Yeah.
like a council.
Yeah, yeah,
He's the
okay.
one. He warned in the actual story. He like warned all of Krypton like, hey, the planet's about to explode. Nobody believed him, but he kind of prepared to at least save Soups, and so they
Yeah.
were able to get him off the planet before it exploded.
Yeah.
In this world, Krypton never exploded, so everybody thinks that Jor's kind of a idiot for thinking, hey, the planet was going to explode. He's like, I got ran out of being on the science council and being a part of the government here, and Krypton's kind of turned into just a shell of what it used to be. There's a lot of things you can kind of parallel in this story to other things going on now,
Right.
like you can a lot of times. And he's just like, it's not. He thinks that Krypton is like a shell of its former self, and so he's meeting with these like religious like extremist groups and stuff because they want to bring back the old Krypton. And Superman's like, Dad, like, I get how you're upset of how like the council treated you, but
Yeah.
dude, like, pump your brakes. Like, this isn't
Sure.
like,
Sure.
like, calm down. This isn't the way you need to do this. Like, think about your family, man. And he was like,
Calm down, old man. Don't be so
Yeah.
square.
he's like, think about your family. Like, mom wouldn't have liked to see you like this.
Oh, wouldn't.
His mother died of the eating disease. I don't know what that
Eating
is.
disease.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
okay.
they have kind of a back and forth, and he's like, it kind of doesn't give you the right. You don't have the right because you don't like this to kind of like try to fix
Yeah,
everything
sure,
to make
sure.
Krypton the way you want it to. And
I just want to know more about this eating disease.
they never go into it. Now the new thing is apparently, do you know the Phantom Zone? You heard of the Phantom Zone?
I have heard of the Phantom Zone.
So it's a place where they would like send bad guys.
Mm-hmm.
So Jor is also the one who created
There's
the Phantom
one,
Zone.
There's one in Marvel too, but it's Wasteland.
It's the negative zone or something like
negative zone,
that. Yeah, way.
something like that. Yeah.
Um,
Because I mean, that looks
And
like where
Deadpool?
Deadpool is in this next
at
one.
least
yeah.
in some of the trailers.
Yeah, sure.
And so he tells him, like, now they want us to, even though nobody's being hurt in the Phantom Zone, they're just being kept there where they can't harm anybody. They think that's torturous. And now they want to lambaste me for that. And he's like, well, Dad, like, maybe you just, like, calm down. He's just,
Yeah.
he realizes that his father is just an angry, angry old man.
Sure, and he's
he just
overreacting
doesn't-
to the
yeah,
issues.
And
all that
he
stuff.
he has a lot of hate in his heart, and it bothers Cal a lot, you can see.
Okay.
As he leaves, and he just tells him like, hey, I gotta go, I'll see you later. And his dad angrily kind of like, bashes some furniture, or no, it's like a mechanical bird that's in a tree next to him, but it shows anger between the two of them. Their relationship's not great. So we flash back then to Batman, Wonder Woman, and Robin trying to figure out what's going on with the plant.
Right.
And they're introduced to the guy who has done all this. His name is Mongol.
Mongol.
We don't know that yet because, well, he'll tell us
Mongol.
later. Superman tells us. But they're trying to figure out how this could happen. Superman deduces that, well, he has like this kind of teleportation channel. Maybe since it's Superman's birthday, he helps out a lot of people, a lot of planets. Maybe they sent it to him as a gift, didn't realize how it would interact with them. And it's kind of this accident. We need to help to try to figure it out. And that's when Mongol appears and goes, "You have it almost exactly right, except for 2 minor details." Because he tells them how remarkable you animals really are, almost intelligent. He goes, "Firstly, I knew precisely what this thing would do. And secondly, it was not intended as a token of gratitude." He's like, "I intended it to use it to destroy him."
Oh.
He tells him that black mercury is this flower that he has, and he's traveled all over this place to find it. And it's something between a plant and kind of an intelligent fungus. It attaches its form to the victim, and by doing so, it gives them their heart's desire. So it's telepathic, like it reads them like a book, and it feeds them a logical simulation of the happy ending they deserve. And he goes, of course, its victims could shrug it off. They just don't want to.
Symbiosis?
Mm-hmm.
Is that what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So essentially, this plant is attached to Superman, and it's feeding him his happy ending, where,
Nope.
or at least his heart, of where Krypton didn't explode. Like he got
Yeah.
to, live the
Okay.
life there.
Okay. All right.
So that's what's going on. So,
Oh, so that's what we saw to begin with?
that's what we saw him there. He
Him
was
coming
already
home with his
in
yeah,
because
okay.
he's already
All right.
stuck in that
Gotcha,
vision.
Gotcha. Okay.
So he just kind of tells him, like, why are you doing this? He wants to get rid of Superman. He tells him, now I'm the manager around here. Naturally, I'll need to settle in and adjust to your many interesting customs. Like, I know that you like, of an example, you guys like to discriminate on basis of age and gender. So perhaps you could advise me on who I need to kill first, then, is what he tells him.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And Wonder Woman just kind of looks at him, shrugs, walks up to him, and just punches him right in the jaw. And you think, oh, that's got to do something, because I love how Gibbons draws the action. Like, you can tell with the thrust but it's like,
She's
a
put a lot
punch.
into it, yeah.
And he's just like, huh. And he just shakes his jaw, and her hand is hurt.
Sure.
And he's like, thanks. That answers my question. So Mongol and Wonder Woman begin to fight. And while the two of them are fighting, we flash back to what's going on in Superman's brain.
Okay.
We get that Superman has rushed to the hospital because his cousin, Kara Zel-El, or Kara Supergirl, who's
Gotcha.
has been attacked.
Horse lover.
Horse lover. Kara has been attacked. And that they found that she was attacked by rioters, and they found this around her neck, like tied to it when they found her. And it's propaganda about how, like, you guys need to get rid of the neutral zone. Like, the whole L family is kind of being targeted
Yeah.
because of things that his dad has done
What a strange, like, it's supposed to be like a positive thing in his brain.
in his brain.
What a strange way to go.
So, and because it's, well, I think I have a theory.
I got
for
you.
it. We'll get
Yeah,
to
I'm
it.
just asking.
And so the doctor's like, the anti-Phantom Zone campaigns, like, see the Phantom Zone ray as an instrument of torture. Your father invented it. That makes the House of L unpopular by, these people. So they're all going to go after them. And it kind of like Clark goes to see Kara by himself, and he sees her in pain, and it just shakes him a bit. And he comes back out, and he calls his wife. He calls Lila, and he tells her, hey, I think we need to go, like, get out of here, go to Atomic City, go to see your parents. Like, I don't think it's safe here right now. Just with the way my dad's been, just what's happening to Kara, like, I'm worried about the kids kind of thing.
Sure.
So he's like, I'll take Van, who's their son, and I'll meet you. They have 2 kids. And I'll meet you at your parents' house. So he
Van.
goes to leave. And as he goes to leave the hospital to head there, they're stopped by police because there's a march going on. It's a big torch procession for the Sword of the Rao, which is the group that his dad was meeting with earlier. So he can't go to where he needs to because they
Right.
kind of stopped everything off for this parade. We go back to
Like present day.
present day. It's
Yeah.
not really,
Yeah.
I guess, our current
I
reality.
got you. Yeah. Sure.
And it's the battle between Mongol and Wonder Woman, and he is just throwing her around. And Wonder Woman finally finds all the weapons stash that Superman's kept over the years. Because remember, he keeps trophies kind
Yeah,
of in
sure.
the Fortress of
Yeah.
Solitude. And she picks up a weapon, fires it at him. It does nothing to him, really. Like, he's just so indestructible almost that even Wonder Woman's having a hard time trying to stop him.
Yeah.
And you can see that he's handling her almost with ease. There's a point like Batman's desperately trying to wake Superman out of this, and we flash back into Superman's mind to where he's now the parade's going by, and they're announcing their new chairman. This religious extremist group is, and it's Superman's dad, Jor, and he's like, "Okay, yeah, no," and he like grabs Van, and they turn around and they leave, and they head the complete opposite way of where they're supposed to go. And they go out to the Kandor mines, which is Kandor's the city. I think we've talked about it a little bit in Superman Red Sun. It's the city that Brainiac shrinks down.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
that,
yeah,
Superman?
yeah. No,
So
definitely.
the crater there is where, obviously, they couldn't stop it even when Krypton exists or it still exists. There's a crater there of Kandor, and they just go there, and there's nothing there. And Superman just needs to think just to get away from everything.
Sure.
And Van tells him, is like, there's nothing out here, his son. And Superman tells him, like, there's something wrong. Like, I know that there's something wrong. And I'm sorry, I know this isn't making sense, but, like, I got to tell you, like, I know that I'm your father, but I have a feeling that none of this is real. Like, it doesn't feel real to me. And, like, this sandstorm starts, like, coming through as he's talking. He's like, I sorry, but I don't think you're real.
Yeah.
And we cut back to it's intersect between the two of flashback of where Batman's like, his eyes are starting to water because he's crying when he's telling his son this. He's like, I think he's starting to kind of like break through this a bit. And he's telling him, he's like, Father, you're scaring me. And Superman tells his imaginary son, he's like, don't you see this is all wrong? Like, Krypton shouldn't have ended like this. Like, this shouldn't have happened, not like this.
Right.
And so he's able to eventually, like, break free from this by having, realizing himself, pulling himself kind of out of it.
Sure.
Of realizing that things don't work. We do notice while they're trying to get this thing off of Superman, they realize that the gloves that Mongol was wearing are made to kind of be able to handle it without it taking effect. Because as soon as Batman wrestles it off, it attaches itself to Batman.
Right.
And we get then an alleyway of him and his parents, and a thug comes out and he fires at his parents, but he misses, and Thomas Wayne tackles the
wow.
gunman to it's already
Yeah, it's already more
taking its
positive or
effect
whatever,
on Batman.
Sure.
So Batman is now rendered useless, kind of laying on the floor with this thing attached to him, as Robin's trying to figure out what to do, but Superman's come through, and they do a good job of showing you just how this is a different type of Superman. He looks so...
He looks pissed.
He does. He's like, who did this to me? And Jason Todd looks scared. And he's like, I don't know. This big yellow guy, he's like, he just tries to tell him, he just kind of looked like, and he goes, Mongol. And he yells it again. And I love how Gibbons does the art of where behind it,
He looks like Captain Planet.
he does a little bit, but how it says it again.
Oh, yeah,
and it
look at that.
booms out across the
Huge,
whole panel
yeah.
just to show you how upset it is, because it seems now that this is a different Superman, because
Yeah.
whatever ending, like even the happy parts of that,
Yeah.
he realizes it wasn't real.
Right.
But if that's what his heart desired, he just had to wrestle himself away from that to come. And there's just a different level of like hatred there.
Yeah.
What we get then is an epic battle between the two of them as Jason Todd is able to find the gloves that Mongol was wearing and get the Black Mercury off Batman.
Okay.
While the two fight back and forth, Robin is desperately trying to find Superman while carrying this thing around. I do love that we see a different side of Superman here that's very different from the Silver Age Superman, of where Mongol is so close to like just hurting him. And he's like, happy birthday, Kryptonian. I give you oblivion. And Superman just says, burn. It hits him with his like heat vision, because it's a moment of just pure kind of anger from him. It's not something we see.
Yeah.
But it's something that it's a very brief moment too, because Alan Moore's Superman always still focuses on the core of what Superman is when it gets to it. But it's just to show you that he is going after Mongol with a ferocity we don't see a lot of
Right.
often.
Right.
So the two fight back and forth. There's a moment where
I
Superman...
guess that is true. You don't see Superman pissed off very often. Yeah.
They kind of did it in Injustice. We'll get to that at some point in time.
Yeah,
I won't
sure,
spoil it. It's based off video games.
Yeah.
But it's a really popular story arc. Kind of the most popular Superman now, which is sad because he's a little Homelander-ish. We'll get to that. He's dictator-ish.
Yeah.
people love evil Superman, and I don't get it because, well, I get it some, but to me, I feel like there's nothing wrong with having a character that is good for being good. I don't know.
No, I
Anyway,
get it. I get it.
So,
But that's also why you have Bizarro.
yeah.
You know, because it kind of services that other side.
Exactly, and
Yeah.
we'll get to Bizarro. Funny enough, there's a moment where he's distracted by a statue that he has kind of in memoriam of his parents because he has like a flashback of everything he's just been through.
Yeah.
And Mongol uses this moment to try to finally, knock out Superman and kill him. And Jason Todd gets causes a distraction. He's like, "Hey, almost intelligent, huh?" And he turns up to look at him, and he throws the black mercury to it, and you see that it attaches to him. But then we see, and I love it again, the same panel by panel of where it's the distorted reality with the actual reality. In the distorted reality, Mongol knocks the flower away and he, disintegrates Robin. Well, in the actual reality, Robin's able to swing down. And in the, distorted reality, Mongol is able to sit there and snap Superman's neck and rip his head off.
Yeah, sure.
But in actual, he's on the floor in the comatose state. And it's like, but then Mongol's able to sit there and put his head on a spike and use it to rule. But no, because it's over. Like he lost to his own device. And I just like the back and forth that they had created earlier. Essentially, we get then everything's good. They go to give presents. And I do love this. I find it very Superman. After they've kind of locked him up, our Mongol up, and they ask him what he's going to do, and he tells them that he's going to take care of him. He has a place for Mongol. So then they want to give him birthday gifts, and Wonder Woman gives him an exact duplicate of the bottle city of Kandor to replace the real one, which was enlarged, like the
Right.
bottle that he had.
Right.
And she goes, "The Paradise Island Jim Smith made it, and you need X-ray and microscope vision to appreciate it, really." And he goes, why, Diana? That's just," and he uses his super speed, and he flies off into his room, and he hides the one he already has. And he comes back, and he goes, it's perfect. Like, that's what
Yeah.
I wanted.
Yeah,
And it's
sure.
just like a very kind of like, for all of everything that happened, a really cool kind of Superman
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
And he's like, "That's cool." So they kind of share their moment, and then Bruce goes and tells him, like, "Hey, like, I had a new rose made for you, and they called it the Krypton, but well, I'm afraid it kind of got stepped on, and frankly, it's dead now." And Superman goes, "Don't worry about it, Bruce. Perhaps maybe it's for the best." Kind of like thinking about Krypton as a planet in a way. And he's like, "All right, come on. Does anyone want coffee while I help clean up this place?" And then we get an epilogue of just showing how Mongol is still content, thanks to the Black Mercury. And that's where we end. We're
So-
a nice little
Mongol at the end of this is trapped in his own head.
in his own head. Yep.
That's cool.
So that's the perfect place for us to stop then and take a break. And then we will come back and close out our Alan Moore episode with our story of whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And we'll do that right after this, right here on Bros, Foes, and Heroes. All right, and welcome back into Bros, Foes, and Heroes
Well,
as
thank
we
you.
continue.
Oh. I was here.
Yeah, that's fine. You were already here.
Hey, let me ask you something.
What's up?
Whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow?
We're about to get into that.
Oh,
Mike.
okay, great.
That as we continue our Alan Moore Superman issue of the show. And just a little backstory here. I think we've talked about it a little bit, but Crisis on Infinite Earths was a big thing that happened, a big event that happened in '86 for DC Comics. That is like the first of the many events that kind of reset the entire universe for the comics world. They essentially said, "Hey, we've been doing this stuff for so many years. It's so confusing. It's so convoluted. What if we just kind of reset everything to make it easier for readers then?" And that's exactly kind of what they were doing. They were resetting everything, making one version of each character, making a jump on place for all these things. So because of that, a lot of titles were either coming to an end, or all of these Silver Age stories that we've covered before, kind of through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the Our Pal Jimmy Olsen, all that fun kind of stuff was kind of going to be not in canon anymore
Sure.
because it's a completely
Sure.
new universe. So Julius Schwartz at the time, who was the editor of the Superman title, came up with the idea that this is essentially because in October through September of that year, Action Comics and Superman were going to be off of news shelves to make way for Man of Steel, which was the new John Byrne Superman like origin story. So there was going to be no more Superman or Action Comics title. So he viewed it as, hey, this is kind of like the end of Superman in a way.
Yeah.
So why don't I get Jerry Siegel?
Why do they always want to end their good heroes?
Well, but him looking at it though is
Yeah.
like, hey, they're restarting
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
I'm going to reboot this. Or like this, they're kind of wanting to end what we've done everything for the past. This is the first time though.
Yeah.
Like we have to understand this is the first time this
Sure.
ever happened.
Sure.
So, he's like, I think I'll get Jerry Siegel to write the last story since he and Simon created Superman.
Yeah.
Won't it
Yeah.
be cool if he writes the last story?
It just seems like they're always trying to kill Superman. I
Well,
don't
yeah.
understand.
So they
That's what brought
go.
you here.
So they go and they are able, I think it was at a Comic-Con or something convention, they're able to meet with
Yeah.
Siegel, and he's all on board, and they're going to have him do it. And DC lawyers get involved because I think there's something going on with the, who has rights to Superman and stuff like that. And they're like, yeah, no, he can't write it for you. And they're like, oh, okay. Well, then I guess I'll get Alan Moore to go ahead and write it for me. And so Alan Moore wrote the last 2 issues that he is himself viewed after talking. Like he goes, what I got from Julius Schwartz is essentially he felt like this was the end of a Superman that there didn't need to be an end for.
Yeah.
Like he was just like, that like there was nothing in my mind. He wanted me to show how good of a concept Superman was without telling you there's no reason for this concept still not to work kind of thing. So he kind of takes it to me and makes like a love letter to the Silver Age Superman and all of this and the way he does it all. And I enjoyed it a lot. So we're going to get into it. And he opens it up with a very Alan Moore type like paragraph intro that's, very...
Backstory. All that
well,
kind of
just
stuff.
I don't know how to... He has a lot of gusto and just the way he writes. He has, like you can tell...
Well, he's British.
Yeah. This is an imaginary story,
don't know what that
which may never happen, but then again may.
Yeah.
About a perfect man who came from the sky and did only good. It tells of his twilight when the great battles were over and the great miracles long since performed. Of how his enemies conspired against him and the final war in the snow-blind wastes beneath the northern lights. Of the women he loved and the choice he made, taken from him, save for one. It ends with the wink. It begins in a quiet Midwestern town one summer afternoon in the quiet Midwestern future. Away in the big city. People still sometimes glance up People still sometimes glance up hopefully from the sidewalks. A glimpse, a distant speck in the sky. But no, it's only a bird, only a plane. Superman died 10 years ago. This is an imaginary story. Aren't they all?
This is not where Death of Superman
No.
came from to begin with.
That would be
right?
7 years later when they
Yeah,
actually,
that's what I'm saying.
No, this is because he goes, this is an imaginary story.
Yeah, but I'm
Aren't they
saying
all?
there is a parallel there to him
Yeah.
disappearing and
Very
all
true.
that kind of stuff.
And there's a in memoriam statue that we kind of get.
That's
We
in-
know where this is headed.
That's in that movie.
So while I'm going to do my best, there's a lot that goes into this, but
Stupid Zack Snyder movie.
so Lois is met by a man named
Dick Clark.
Tim Crane from
Oh.
the Daily Planet.
Okay.
And he's like, hey, excuse me, Lois Lane. And she goes, it's Lois Elliott now, but yeah, come on in. And he's like, okay, well, I thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Like we're doing this for our 10-year anniversary of, I'm trying to think what your month, the last days of Superman, our memorial edition this year, since it's been 10 years. And he like pulls out a recorder and he's like, all right, this is interviewing Lois Elliott for the Daily Planet, lead feature, The Last Days of Superman. And he sets it up and she makes coffee and she goes into the story of the Last Days of Superman.
Right.
Superman lands back down on the planet of Earth from dealing with other things
Okay.
to a scene of kind of carnage, of everything going crazy. And there's a department store that kind of looks outside like
Every
things are
time he
going
tries
wrong.
to run some errands,
Comes back
that's
to
when
this.
it happens.
And
yeah.
he's like, what's going on? And they're like, Bizarro did this. And he's like, wait, Bizarro? Bizarro doesn't do things like this. Like, Bizarro's weird. He's goofy. Bizarro doesn't like because there's
Yeah.
like carnage and like he's like,
The
you
only
know,
time Bizarro's a bad guy is when somebody else makes him be that way.
exactly. And he's like, Bizarro, come on out and explain yourself. I really need an explanation because like there's people like killed and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, and so Superman's trying to make sense of this all, and he goes, and he's like, I want an explanation. Bizarro tells him it's easy. It's part of my self-improvement plan. I'm not going to speak on the Bizarro kind of talk while he does it, but he's like, I realize that I'm not a perfect imperfect duplicate, that I need to kind of try harder then. So he's like, for example, your planet of Krypton blew up by accident and you came to Earth as a baby. So I decided to blow up Bizarro World on purpose and come to Earth as an adult. And he's like, Bizarro, what you blew up Bizarro World? And he's like, yeah, that's right. Pretty imperfect. And like Superman's just still like, this isn't Bizarro. Like he's confused by like what's.
Yeah.
And he's like, what's happened? Like I don't believe that you wouldn't do that. And he's like, I also realized then that's just the beginning. I realized that you never kill. So me, I kill lots of people. Them very grateful with screams of happiness. Like it's a very, he does a really good job in this too of balancing a line or of just kind of showing you of these characters that aren't supposed to be acting like adults being very adulty. It's kind of a commentary of the new, and it's weird to me because he kind of did this a bit in ushering in stuff with Watchmen.
Yeah.
But it's also a commentary at the same time of, hey, these are, these were still characters for kids at some point in time, making them very like, dark and depressing and violent. There's something off about that still. And you kind of see that with the Bizarro here and even with other villains that we'll get to. And
That
then
makes
he's
sense.
like, and he's like, oh, and then also I'm a little bit blue kryptonite, that meteor that carried me here, so for good luck, I bring that with me too. See, you am alive, Superman, and me am perfect imperfect duplicate. Then me have to be, and he holds the blue kryptonite to himself. And Superman's like, Bizarro, no. And he's like, everything going dark. Hello, Superman. Hello, because it's Bizarro.
Yikes.
And like Bizarro just kills himself there in front of Superman.
Wow.
And he's just like Superman doesn't know how to process this.
Yeah.
And it flashes back to Lois and Tim Crane, and she's like, yeah, after years of harmless stupidity, like that was strange. Like that strange backwards creature had suddenly launched himself on a rampage of genocide, homicide, and finally suicide. Like it just didn't make sense. But then after that, what came next, Bizarro's death seemed trivial. And they're like, oh yeah, I forgot that Bizarro died. We'll get to Bizarro in a second. But we go back to, I told you they kind of updated it. He's no longer a newspaper reporter. Now he works at a television station. And he gets a box that's addressed to him, and he opens it, and they're all filled with these little Superman figures. And they're based off the old figures that actually existed because, Lana Lang tells him, hey, squeeze his legs. And he does his little, I think he's arm move, maybe kind of.
Pushes his arms
Well,
up,
she does to show him, and a laser, like the heat vision, shoots out and like cuts the desk in half. And like, oh my goodness, what's this? And about that time, all the little toys fly out of the box. And they fly around Clark Kent, who got the box, and they zap him with the lasers to reveal his Superman uniform underneath.
Oh, my.
And they're like, oh. And instead of like trying to play it off, Superman's just like, yeah, okay. And they're like, or Lana's like, Clark, that's you after all these years. And he's just like, he's not trying to hide it. He's like, yeah,
Like,
whatever. We're just going through.
Yep, see ya.
And the toys start talking. And they're like, it was him all this time. He just combed his hair and stuck on a pair of glasses. Ha, the great gag. And then like Superman's listening and they're like, those voices, oh, it's Toyman and the Prankster, which again are old school, just like, throwaway villains. And they're like, oh, and we have this box for you too. It's a gift, but it's covered in lead, so no peeking. And he's like, everybody stand back. It might be a bomb. And he opens it and a body falls out.
Yikes.
And it's Pete Ross, who Pete Ross was, I guess, a friend back through the time of Superman.
Okay.
And they're like, yep, Right, but not before we were able to get his secret identity out of him. Like, that's how we were able to find out who you were, and then we offed him.
Wow.
And Superman's just kind of, again, like, I don't get this. Like, you guys don't do, like, that's
Yeah, they
not
don't
the type
kill
of villains
people
you are.
necessarily. Yeah.
And he's like, I have one question for you guys. Do you guys know what radio waves look like? And they're like, what do you mean? Because he's able to use that to hunt them down. And he finds Prankster and Toyman, and he just clobbers the mess out of them again. And it says they gave in almost immediately, but didn't seem able to tell him why they'd suddenly decided to start murdering his friends. Like, I'm telling you, it's there is a little bit of like a commentary I feel here of like being violent with these characters just for the sake of being violent in some of it.
Anybody named the Prankster probably needs to be throttled anyway.
Probably, maybe just a smidge.
The Prankster.
And they talk about that they putting him behind bars didn't mend the senseless damage. And so was Clark Kent. Once publicly revealed his secret identity, he just decided to drop it. Like, he's like, there's no reason. If everybody knows I'm Superman, I don't need to pretend to be Clark Kent anymore. So they're there at Pete's funeral, and I'm trying to remember.
It's like the Spider-Man thing, in the last movie.
It is.
Yeah, where you need everybody's mind to be wiped.
You do. But so he's dealing with the death of Pete Ross, the death of Bizarro. Why are his villains
Such a
coming
good
back and acting
baseball
like
player,
that?
too.
We think that Brainiac's dead, but we find out that's not necessarily the case. Yeah,
Okay.
very good.
No, it wasn't good.
As Lex Luthor has been out in the Arctic trying to find him and is able to locate only the head left of Brainiac. Well, Luthor thinks, all right, I'm going to take the information you have here and I'm going to use your technology and I'll be able to take over Superman.
Because he basically pulled a skull
Yeah,
out
it's like
of
a metal
the
skull.
snow.
And Brainiac's like, not so fast, Lex. I'm not really dead. And he uses the technology. It kind of climbs up his arm and it takes over Lex's brain.
Puts a brain cap on him.
He does. And he tells him to like put my mask to you. I am now using your body like for my will. And so Brainiac now controls Lex Luthor essentially. Brainiac's brain mixed with everything Lex Luthor knows, and he's using his body kind of.
Yeah.
And they're going to go finally kill Superman. Then Metropolis is kind of invaded by a bunch of Metallos. Metallo is a villain that was Superman that has a kryptonite heart. They're aliens too. And they kind of scale the Daily Planet looking for him, and they try to attack, and they want to, kill Superman. Superman's able to create a giant magnet out of the globe on top of the Daily Planet that kind of attracts all of the Metallos up there to him, and he hurls them off into space. And he's like, all right, everybody's coming after me. Like, they know who I am now, and this isn't going to stop. I need to take all my loved ones and get away from here and take you all to the Fortress of Solitude. That's the only, he's like, that's the only way I'm going to be able to protect you since they know that I'm Superman now. They're all going to keep coming.
Yeah. It's always his answer. Throw people in space.
Oh, true.
Just chuck them in space. It'll be fine.
So Soups takes Lois and Lana, Jimmy, Perry White, and his wife Alice, and I think that's all of them. And they go to the Fortress of Solitude. As they're leaving, I think, what is it, Krypton Man or Kryptonite Man? What is this? It's another like Silver Age villain. I think it is. I think it is Kryptonite Man, where he's just essentially his skin's made of kryptonite. Is like there to like attack him, and Brainiac's like, no, we can use this guy for our planet. We'll just kind of abduct him, or for our plan, we'll just kind of abduct him and take him out here to the Arctic to go find Superman. Crypto shows up. I told you to appear. Crypto showed up out there at the Fortress of Solitude, and everybody realizes like, hey, like things are serious right now.
Because the dog showed up?
Well, no, just like that Superman brought us all out here.
Okay. All right.
Everybody's trying to attack him. They're trying to defeat him. There's problems. Alice and Perry aren't getting along as husband and wife for some reason. Lois and Lana, even though they both love Superman, are kind of able to put that aside and just bond over like, hey, stuff's getting really serious right now. Crypto's there just being by his, his faithful master kind of. And Superman's nice to have his loyal friend. And then the Legion of Superheroes appears from the 30th century. I know we haven't talked about them before, but they are superheroes from the future. You don't need to know a lot about them. The only thing that I'll need to tell you is that they have come back in time.
Okay.
and Kara, or Supergirl, is with them. In current continuity of the story that was going on, Kara had died in the Infinite Crisis storyline.
Okay.
So she was already dead in comics. So she's obviously from a different timeline, from a different past, like she's not there. So he feels kind of off about them coming back in time on this exact night to visit him because they give him a statue while he's there too. And it's like that in memoriam statue.
Yeah.
And he kind of gets the feeling like, oh, you guys came back here just to kind of like, you wanted to give me your final wishes. Like,
Yeah.
we wanted to say our final goodbyes kind of thing. But they won't tell him that. So it ends with, he never told me exactly. Lois is telling this whole story, obviously. And she's like, he never told me exactly what happened that night before the siege began. But as soon as I saw him the next morning, I knew something had upset him. He looked funny. He looked as if he had been crying. And like that's how it ends out. The first, because it's a two-parter.
Yeah.
To show that like Superman is just in the Fortress of Solitude, just kind of crying, not knowing what to do.
That's inside
Pete
the
Ross,
Fortress of Solitude.
that's inside the Fortress of Solitude. It's very much kind of like the Batcave where he has everything collected.
Much less ice.
Yep.
than I
Yeah.
thought.
His friend Pete Ross is dead. Bizarro acted out a character, killed himself in front of him after all the damage he destroyed. Toyman and Prankster, like everybody's acting more vicious than they are. Brainiac's apparently back and coming after him.
Yeah.
They have like it's just, it feels like the Metallos
Stuff's
all
going
came out.
down.
They're all choosing like, we're going to destroy Superman, and he doesn't know what to do. And seeing the Legion of Superheroes travel back from time to kind of like wish him, hey, hope you do well, man. He kind of views it as like, this is the end.
Yeah.
Like, I think like he
Yeah.
realizes that. And so now we get the last issue here of the Action Comics of the second part of the story of whatever happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And we cut back to Lois and Tim Crane, who's doing the interview. And Lois's new husband walks in. And he's like, oh, is that coffee I smell? And he's like, yeah, nope, you're right. Best darn nose for coffee in all of Pittsdale. So apparently they live in Pittsdale now, which I
Pittsdale.
guess is like a metropolis suburb maybe. And she's like, you'll have to fix it yourself, though. I'm busy being a celebrity. Tim, this is my husband, Jordan. Jordy, this is Tim. Tim from the planet. And he goes, oh, hi. Tim goes, I hope you don't mind me interviewing your wife about, and Jordan, her husband, goes, about my ex? Nah, I can live with it. He weren't nothing special. Us ordinary working slobs, son. We're the real heroes, is what he tells him. And he's like, now, Jordy, don't you get started on that. Like, is what Lois tells him. You go and make coffee. Yeah. And he kind of walks off smiling while he's making coffee, and she gets back into the story.
He looks like Pedro Pascal.
A little bit. So that is her husband, Jordan Elliott.
Okay.
So,
How do you? And we don't know how that happened.
no,
Okay.
I mean, not in this
All right.
story.
Okay.
Her husband, Jordan Elliott.
Yeah.
We get then part 2 of what happened to Man of Tomorrow, and we get back where she's telling the story of Superman's kind of last stand. Brainiac arrives there at the Fortress of Solitude, and he's greeted by the Legion of Supervillains, which is also from the 30th century, very similar to. That's the ship he made.
Well, that's
Brainiac's
what I'm saying.
ship.
The big skull ship here. It reminds me of the thing in Super Friends. Like, you remember
Legion
how
of Doom.
they used to have that big skull shaped thing in a swamp.
In the swamp there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so they land there at the Fortress of Solitude, and the Legion of Supervillains shows up too. They're from the 30th century, and they come to tell him like, hey, like our history books show us that like Superman will battle his biggest foe today, and like this is where he loses, and we just wanted to come and bear witness kind of to it. And Brainiac's, oh, that makes sense. Of course I'm his greatest foe. Like, today's going to be my day. And so he goes in on the ship, and he puts up this giant like sphere, like
It's
a
like a
force
dome.
field,
Yeah, big dome.
over the Fortress of Solitude. And none of the heroes can get in, like, because they've come to help. Like, they know they're there. Like, people are after Superman.
Everywhere I look, something reminds me of her.
We're just going to keep that
It's
joke
just
going.
a big dome.
Like Shazam's there. We have Wonder Woman. Batman and Robin are beating on it with sticks for some reason. I don't get that. But like
my
nobody
favorite
can
panel.
get in. Kryptonite Man has shown up, and like Superman's like flying away because he doesn't know how to deal with like the siege that's happening.
Yeah, sure.
And he goes to talk to Perry, and he kind of tells, like, he's looking for Perry. He's like, hey, man, like, they have this heart to heart, and he tries to tell him about, like, his love life of Lana and Lois, of, like, I feel this way about Lana, and I feel this way about Lois, and they kind of have a heart to heart about he and Alice, and it's just, you know, kind of a growing moment there.
Did you see who's playing Perry White in the James Gunn Superman? It's the guy from The Wire. Shit, that guy.
Bunk?
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah, he's playing Perry
Dude,
White. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it's cool.
Oh,
He'll be
man.
good at that.
He will be. But we see Lana Lang and Jimmy Olsen then, and they're like, we got to do something to help Superman. Like, he does so much for us. And Jimmy finds some the Elastic Lad serum that Superman has kept. And then Lana finds a pool of the magic lake water that might be
goodness.
a source of radiation. It's tropes that were used in previous episodes.
yeah,
or
sure, I
previous
get it.
issues,
Yeah,
though,
yeah.
that he's bringing back in to give them like the temporary zany superpowers
Sure.
like they would have because they want to help Superman. They feel like he's done so much for us. We need to help him. So Jimmy Olsen is a Elastic Lad, and Lana's, I don't know, Chemical
Elastic
Girl,
Lad.
super, whatever she is.
Yeah.
And they go out there to fight Kryptonite Man. And they're fighting, and Lana realizes that, hey, Lex, like, is being controlled by Brainiac because Lex fights through and goes, Lana, Brainiac got me,
Yeah.
kill me, please. Like,
Yeah.
he's telling her to kill him because,
Wow.
and so she's like, okay. I mean, she doesn't, like, there's a little more than that, but she doesn't, like, all right. And she just, like, karate chops him in the neck, right? And she
Sure.
just kills Lex Luthor. Well, by doing so, though, the legions of supervillains kind of step in because, like, oh, he needs our help, and they end up shocking Lana Lang to, like, one of them zaps her to death, like she's
Yeah.
a crisp kind of
Yeah.
thing. Jimmy Olsen goes down to, like, save her and attack the others, and he's hit in the back by a ray from Brainiac because Brainiac, even though Lex Luthor is dead, is willing his body up still. Like,
Well,
he's
that-
using the
That kind of makes sense.
the devices to still shoot to
Yeah.
send things
Sure.
up.
Sure.
And he's like, one way or another, I'm going to defeat Superman. Like,
Yeah.
I'm his greatest foe. I'm going to do this. Our
So-
final assault begins.
So it's Weekend at Bernie's Superman edition.
Yeah. So while everything's going on, Perry and Alice, he goes to save Alice. They kind of reconcile a bit.
Mhm.
Kryptonite Man breaks in.
I do not like this guy. Kryptonite Man.
I'm pretty sure
It's
that's his
goofy
name, right?
looking.
Well, his skin's all kryptonite.
Well, I'm just saying. I mean, it's the least creative name for a super villain.
It was the 50s.
That's whatever.
So, and he's looking for Superman, and Krypto sacrifices himself to essentially, like, bite at and just tear away at Kryptonite Man, knowing that he's like, you can see he's like turning green while he's doing it, and he lets out like a howl as, like, he's killed Kryptonite Man, Krypto has, and he lets out a howl as he himself kind of dies too.
Yeah.
And you see Lois, as she's talking to Tim, be like, Pete Ross, Lana, Jimmy, now Krypto, all gone. Like, I was with Superman when he heard his pet's death howl, but we couldn't do anything about it. Like, Superman's losing everything.
His pet's death howl.
Yeah. And Superman goes to save Lois as she's essentially, like, they know that it's Perry and Alice. They're safe together, but all that's left then is him and Lois.
Yeah.
And the Legion of Superheroes, are supervillains, like, you want to show up, and they're like, all right, it's time for you. Like, we've come to help. Or, I'm sorry, we've killed Lana, now it's time for you. Like, we fried your other girlfriend, and he's again hurt, and he's like, you hurt Lana? And he shoots his flames at him, or his heat vision, and it hits the one who's zapped him. He's like, he burned me. Like, he doesn't do that. Like, he's not bluffing. Like, let's
Right.
get out of here.
Right.
Like, they realize, we've messed with, and so they leave as Superman's still shooting
He's
at him.
not a guy you want to get pissed off.
No.
Yeah.
And they transfer back to they travel back to the 30th century. Rigor mortis starts setting in for Lex, right?
Oh.
And Brainiac can't move him anymore, and eventually the body topples over. And he's like, no, Brainiac's like, come on, Luthor, get up. I will not be betrayed by your human weakness. And he's like, fine, whatever. And he, like, gets up and he starts, like, crawling towards him, like, on his legs.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm coming for you, Kryptonian. My victory is inevitable. They said that. And he's like, Superman, it's crawling off of him, is what Lois says. And he goes, "It's okay, Lois. I don't think he's in any condition to harm us." And he's like crawling because he's like, they said I'd vanquish you. And about that time, like he sits there and he collapses and he's over. It was dead. Or like Brainiac's dead again because he has nothing to feast on. And so they're standing there and he's sitting there and he's like, "I don't like this though. There's so many loose ends. Like it's dead, but like it doesn't explain. The force field's still up. Like why did Bizarro act the way he did? Why did like Toyman why did that happen?" And about that time, you remember a little guy by the name of
Mixoplex?
Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Mixoplex shows up.
I saw the hat.
You did, because he goes, like, Superman thinks for a bit, and that's when he's like, "Of course." And he calls him out. And he's like, "I know you're here. Come out and show yourself." And he pops up. And he tells him, he's like, "So you finally guessed it was me." And he's like, "Why are you guiding all of this? Like, why all this killing and destruction? Like, why?" And he's like, "Don't be naive, Superman." He's like, "I'm immortal. Like, like everybody in the fifth dimension is." He's like, "It's a big problem. Like, we just have to find ways to entertain ourselves." He's
It looks like he was in a hair band like 30 years ago.
he kind of does with the way he's doing it.
Reunion
he's like,
tour.
yeah, he's like, so he tells me, he's like, I have to find ways to spend my existence. He's like, if I took the first 2,000, I didn't even move or breathe. Then the next 2,000 years after that, I spent, being saintly and benign, doing only good deeds. When that novelty began to fade, then I decided to try being mischievous. He's like, and now, 2,000 years later, I'm bored again. So, you know what I've decided to do? I've just decided to be evil for the next 2,000, and we'll see where this goes. And he goes, and after that, who knows? Maybe I'll try being guilty. And he goes, and did you honestly believe a fifth dimension sorcerer would resemble a funny little man in a derby hat? And he kind of turns into this demonic looking type creature, almost, as he's chasing after the two of them, of Superman and Lois now. And about that time, he realizes that there's nothing he can do to stop the power that Mxyzptlk has, because one of Superman's weaknesses, we don't talk about it a lot, is magic. He's weak against magic.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
So he realizes, or Lois realizes on the statue that the Legion of Heroes gave him, that he's holding something, and it's the Phantom Zone projector. We talked about it a little bit, of where he's in villains.
Yeah.
And she tells him that. So Superman runs to grab it, and when he comes back, Mxyzptlk sees what it is and gets scared and decides, I gotta disappear. And to do that, he has to say his name backwards.
Right.
I don't know how to say that. I'm not going to. But he says it, and he starts to disappear. And while he does that, Superman doesn't let him. Because at the same instant, he has the ray sent him to, he sucks him up with the ray. And he gets him trapped there as he's trying to escape.
Right.
And so what it does is he lets out this awful scream, and he essentially just disintegrates as Superman has killed Mr. Mxyzptlk.
So now we got a dead Luthor, a dead Mxyzptlk,
Everybody's dead.
and a dead Bizarro.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like, what is he?
A
And
dead
Superman
Superdog.
explains he's torn in half between dimensions. He panicked when he saw the ray and made a fatal error, just as I knew he would. I killed him, Lois. I intended to kill him. And he goes, I just couldn't risk letting anything that powerful and malignant survive. So I made up my mind, and I did it. I broke my oath, and I killed him. And Lois says, but you had to. You haven't done anything wrong. And Clark goes, yeah, I have. Or I guess Superman goes, yeah, I have. Nobody has the right to kill. Not Mxyzptlk, not you, not Superman. Especially not Superman. And so he kind of turns and he walks away from her. And she says, he turned and walked away in complete silence. And I ran after him, but he didn't reply. And we have another very old Silver Age kind of, remember how there's kryptonite for everything?
Yeah.
So at one point in time, there was a gold kryptonite. And what gold kryptonite did is it just rendered him, while it was near him, it rendered him powerless. So it says, and by the time I realized where he was heading, it was too late. And it shows that he has kind of like a chamber full of it. It says sample storage chamber, keep out. And as he opens it, it says, as he walked into the blinding golden light, he turned, looked back over his shoulder, and he smiled at me. And I never saw Superman again, is what she says.
Wow.
And then we go back to see everybody, like the force field comes down, so the Justice League is able to come and see. Oh, Jimmy's dead. Lana's dead.
So we
Lex is
don't know
dead.
that Superman's actually dead.
We don't.
Okay.
And then as she goes, and that's where they found me outside the locked gold kryptonite chamber, weeping. When Superwoman and Captain Marvel ripped the vault open, it was empty, and he was gone. And she's just there with that trophy, crying. And then Lois says, they discovered a hidden passageway leading out of the fortress, and it was finally concluded that he walked out powerless into the sub-zero waste to freeze. They never found his body. And she's like, more coffee, Tim? And he's like,
He ain't dead.
no, it's getting late. I think like I'm good. Just tell me one last thing though. What do you think of the rumors that Superman is still alive somewhere? And she goes, well, I'm sure a lot of people would like to believe that. But as far as I'm concerned, Superman died in the Arctic. I was there. And he's like, okay, of course. And he's like, all right, I'm sorry. That last question was kind of tactless. I just got to ask. And she's like, no. It's okay. You got to do what you got to do. And about that time, we hear, here's Johnny. And what? Oh, Jonathan, you're awake. As her new husband, Jordan, brings in their son.
Oh.
And he's like, oh, well, listen, I had to, get out of here. I'll send you a copy of the interview once I've transcribed it. And they kind of wish him well as he walks off. And they set the baby down. And Lois is like, all right, well, he's gone. I guess the media won't be bothering us for another 10 years now. And he's like, let's hope so. Down you go, Jonathan, free to play for a while. So how was work today? Great old Dan Hodge brought in some snapshots of his grandchildren, and we're working on this old 48 Buick at the moment, trying to get her working again. She's beautiful. And for some reason, the baby's playing in coal. I don't know why they're letting the
Yeah, I
baby
don't
play
understand
with
that
coal.
either. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you really love it, don't you?
Babies love coal.
You really love it, don't you? Just going to work every day, taking out the garbage, changing Jonathan's diapers, all the normal stuff. And he's like, yep, can't beat it. Although maybe I could live without the diapers. And you see, as the baby releases the coal, it's a diamond there as it drops. And they're...
That's not your baby.
Well, they're talking back and forth, and she goes, you were pretty hard on Superman earlier. And he goes, Superman? Well, he was overrated. He was too wrapped up in himself. He thought the world couldn't get along without him. And he asked, what's for dinner?
Yeah.
And she goes, pizza. And after that, if Jonathan's quiet, I thought maybe bed with a bottle of wine. And after that...
For the baby?
Yeah.
That doesn't seem right.
The baby's going to drink the whole bottle of wine.
Yeah.
She goes, and after that, maybe we live happily ever after. And she goes, sound good to you? And he goes, Lois, my love, what do you think? And as he closes the door,
Yeah.
he winks because Jordan Elliott is
It's
Superman.
Yeah.
But he is a powerless Superman.
Gotcha.
He is just your normal, everyday dude.
Huh. Well, that's kind of cool, though.
Yeah. So there you go.
It's like the end of Batman, like the
Except-
movies.
Yeah,
where
except there's no
he's-
Alfred in the cafe
Right, but I'm
was
just
kinda
saying,
silly.
Yeah.
or the Robin
Eh,
bag thing.
I'm okay
But
with that.
no, you're fine.
I liked the endings.
No, I like it
good.
though. So it gives
Yeah.
them like Superman has that realization
Yeah.
of the thing that I love about Alan Moore's Superman is he's always Superman in a sense of he killed somebody
Right.
and he decided, nope, that's not me. I don't deserve this power. Like that is a strong
Yeah.
statement from somebody that you don't
Yeah,
always
it
get.
is.
So I like the way that Alan Moore really writes Superman, and I just loved it a lot. So
Yeah, it's cool. He
there we go.
He seems to actually give a crap about Superman,
Which is odd. Well, this is the thing, is this happened before he got very disinterested in all of superheroes.
Sure.
So you're not going to get anything like this again because this is before DC screwed him over with Watchmen. But it's just all really good. I kind of brushed over some of it. There's a lot more intricate, like in-depth stuff, obviously.
Sure,
I kind
sure.
of do that when we cover these things because I want you to be able to read and get something from it still
Yeah,
and have fun with it.
absolutely. Bizarro's always been one of my favorites, just because it's so ridiculous that he's a exact. Number one, they always talk about how he's like an exact copy of Superman,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
backwards.
Imperfect
but he's
duplicate.
not.
No.
He's not. Not everything's backwards.
Also, when I didn't talk about
Shouldn't his
another
feet
thing.
go in the other direction? His knees bend weird, and
Another thing that I should point out is that they did get Kurt Swan to do the last 2 issues of this
Yeah.
thing too, since it was kind of the closing out,
Yeah.
because it was gone, and then Man of Steel that John Byrne wrote and drew, or did both of, came out. So they got Kurt Swan to do the art for both of the last 2 issues, and those are the last 2 issues that he did the full art for. Like he would do
Gotcha.
like pages here and there, but
Do
it was the
all
last
of those
issues he
people
did.
on the cover show up?
Because
I don't remember seeing Flash
maybe briefly.
and Green Lantern. Blech.
No, I think it might have been.
Green
Well, some
Arrow.
of them showed up out at the Fortress of Solitude. They were
Okay.
like hitting on
Okay. Okay.
They were brief appearances, but that is taken from the cover of. I'm trying to find it. That is taken from the cover of that Action Comics issue
Uh-huh.
where they're all standing there, and I'm trying to see if it's the same or also.
Oh, yeah. That's the
Yeah,
same one.
it is
Yeah.
all of them. Well, here's what I'll notice. It's a little different.
Hmm.
You want to look at it here, and that kind of looks like. I don't know.
Is it-
I don't know. They changed it some, but that kind of looks like Julius Schwartz, who was the editor of Superman at the time.
Oh, maybe so.
So
That'd be kind of cool.
I never put that there together until just now.
Oh, yeah, it is a little different, isn't it?
Yeah,
Well,
they
there's
changed it a
more.
bit.
No, I guess they're all there. Okay. I was looking at this dude, but no, there's extra, like, normal people in
Yeah,
this
maybe
one.
it's just like Daily Planet workers.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe it's just like
why
male guy Tim.
Why is she running away from the dog?
I don't know.
This little girl's being chased by a dog. Nobody's asking.
Crypto was playing with her.
Yeah, whatever.
All right, so
Crypto dead.
that was our Alan Moore Superman. What we'll cover next week is a single issue. It's another annual. It's about 40 pages, so it's a little bit longer than a regular comic. But it's called, or it's just Action Comics number 775.
Yeah.
But it has the title "What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way," and it takes another look at just a different kind of side of Superman. Joe Kelly and Doug Mankey, I think, did art on that. The thing is, they also turned that single issue into like an hour movie
Yeah.
or an hour and a half movie
Yeah.
called Superman vs. the Elite. So I might watch that too and do both and just be like, hey, they did that in the movie. That's different while we talk about it. But either way, that's what we're going to look at next. Action Comics number 775 as we continue Superman stories that don't suck. And then we are going to close it out with, I did a lot of planning. I have the next, so I'm
Yeah.
laying it out for you.
Yeah.
We're going to close out that kind of saga with Kingdom Come to
Okay.
kind of look at as a story.
Okay.
Then from there, you can look forward to, I have something special planned for tax day, oddly enough, that we'll dive into. Don't want to give that away too much. And then I don't know if we've,
Netflix does your taxes.
I don't know if we've talked about Neil Gaiman too much.
A little bit.
I know Sandman, people love
Yeah.
Sandman, American Gods, like
Yeah.
a lot of good stuff from Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman wrote a really good kind of spiritual successor that I found in looking through this called Whatever Happened to the Cape Crusader.
Oh.
That is a very similar type thing that I've started reading that's really good. And it's villains, like all of Batman's nemesis showing up at his funeral, and they're telling stories of how he died.
Oh.
But it all kind of gives like a different aspect of like Batman, and it's really
Yeah.
good.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
we'll cover that going here in April coming up. And also, we're going to get back into focusing on a character itself because we haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
And I think somebody that Mike probably doesn't know too much about that will be interesting to look into, and that's Booster Gold.
Yeah, I don't know hardly anything about Booster Gold, but I need to because of the upcoming stuff.
Is he going to be a part of it? then?
Marvel's been talking about
DC?
Booster Gold. DC's been talking about Booster Gold for a while, and I can't imagine somebody like Booster Gold is not a favorite of James Gunn
He might be.
because it's always the weird ones. He
There-
always
there's-
loves that stuff.
There's a part. Well, and here's the thing too: is at least for me, there's a lot of. There was a run there around the New 52 time, or I guess Rebirth. Booster Gold is the New 52. Jeff Johns and all that. I'm getting really nerdy. I know what I'm
no,
talking
you're
about all this.
fine. You're fine.
There's a
just
run
have
on
a question.
characters where there's part of Booster. We're going to focus on the New 52 Booster Gold that Jeff Johns did, and he has a really good relationship with Blue Beetle and Ted Cord and stuff. But there's a lot of that run that has a little kind of like Mr. Miracle in it, in a sense of where it's Booster finding the hero in himself, and some of it that actually adds to the character in that story arc. That's really good.
it was
but-
there all along.
It was there all along, Booster.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into the origin of the character and kind of break that down too. But that's what you can look forward in the next couple weeks. So we got a lot of Superman, something fun for tax day, whatever happened to the Cape Crusader, and Booster Gold to come.
Let me
got
ask
you
you
covered.
real quick. There's somebody like Booster Gold in the Marvel universe, the one that becomes Thor. What's his name? Like there's a gold.
Oh,
somebody.
Beta Ray Bill?
Beta Ray Bill. There we go. I always get those two.
Oh,
mixed
you're talking
up.
about name, yeah.
Yeah, the names always get mixed up.
Yeah, I think that's Walt Simonson. But yeah, Beta Ray Bill. That's considered, when he was introduced, I think that's considered a pretty good Thor run. I haven't gone back and read it, but
Yeah.
I always thought the character looked cool.
Yeah, he's cool looking. Looks like a big camel.
I'm not as nerdy as some people might think. A lot of it I just read and figure it out.
Sure. Well, I
Well-
mean, that's the point, right?
Yeah. All right. There you go. As always, appreciate you guys taking the time out to listen. Make sure to check out all the other podcasts on the Rogue Media Network family.
RogueMediaNetwork.com.
And as always, stay safe, everybody. And until next time, take care.
Golly God.
You always make that so quiet, and it's so hard for me to do it over. I'm going to include this too because he makes it so quiet every time. Thank
How
you.
about that? Yeah, that's better.
Pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about pros and heroes. Gonna tell you about.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production.